Hello everyone. Today I am going to be reviewing the movie titled The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, and basically I'm going to be discussing the film. However, it is based upon a novel, and I think the book is probably a lot more recognized than the movie actually. And it was written by, I believe the author was Irish, and his name is John Boyne. And basically, The Boy in the Striped Pajamas follows a young German boy as he goes through this transition within his life and realizes these sort of horrors that are going on with the concentration camps. And for the most part, it focuses more on the young German boy as opposed to most of the other characters. But he still manages to develop, as these kinds of things are sort of being revealed to him at a fairly young age. He ends up befriending a boy of around the same age as him, who is named Shmuel, and he's basically Shmuel, and he's a person within the concentration camp, and so they end up developing this sort of relationship, and you'll kind of see, I kind of don't really want to give away how he figures out that there is a concentration camp and that Shmuel is actually in the concentration camp. It's actually, I think, fairly interestingly unique how the story sort of sets itself up and how he was able to develop a relationship with someone that was within a concentration camp. But for the most part, it really tries to focus in on sort of the childish innocence, and it can be rather cutesy at times. Other times it can be rather dark, and I think some people may take issue with the fact that it goes from being fairly cutesy to dealing with such a dark subject matter that it might be hard for people to juggle with it and maybe accept that kind of change in sort of tone, because it kind of goes back and forth, and I can understand people taking issue with it, and I kind of had that same issue with it watching it, because it is you are dealing with children, and then the fact that you have this childish innocence going on, and then you mix it in with this very dark kind of undertone, especially with the boy's family, in particular the lead boy's family, the German family, and the main character's name is Bruno, and he's played by Aisha Butterfield. And basically, his family is just the way that they try to sort of hide the fact that there is a concentration camp and that people are being hurt and or abused. It's just it is rather awkward how it's so intertwined with everything else in Bruno's life as he moves with his family to another location, as you will see in the beginning of the film. And it's kind of awkward to watch, I think, at times, just because of how the tone shifts and the fact that you are dealing with kids, you are dealing with children, and the fact that they were just surrounded by these circumstances is kind of it can be eye-opening, I think, for some, but for others they might feel a little uncomfortable. And to be honest, I was kind of uncomfortable watching this movie because it just had this whole dark tone within it, especially with Bruno's whole family, which basically his whole family is completely brainwashed. Sister in the film, who's played by Amber Bretty, named Gretel. Completely brainwashed. You'll see at one point how she has like all these Nazi posters and in her room, and how she's just how obsessed she sort of becomes with like the SS. It's kind of weird and odd. And you'll see how the dad, although he's not as enthusiastic, I'd say, as the sister, he's still fairly cruel, sort of in the way in how he treats his family, and it's just not a pleasant film. This film is not a pleasant family kind of tale, and when you're dealing with family, it's sort of awkward to have this family that's so dysfunctional. And there's also the mother, named ELISA, who's played by Vera Farmiga, and you can tell, at least from her character, she's not completely brainwashed. She's not like the sister or the father in the film. She kind of does see the harsh reality of the situation, and I think she just feels hopeless, especially with the way the circumstances and how they basically play it out. Because a lot of the people who would sort of go against sort of the fatherland at this point, they would probably there would probably be chances that their lives would be in jeopardy as well. And it would make sense, I think, from this time period, that even though I think deep down the mother probably wanted to do something, and I think she did try, especially with trying to get at least the kids out of that area, especially when you see how cruelly they treat the Jewish people that actually end up working in the house. And you'll see that happen, basically. And it's just a very I think it is a good film, but the whole circumstances and such the completely dysfunctional family, it makes it, to me, a kind of unpleasant film. Does that mean it's a bad film? No. In fact, I think it's fairly eye-opening at points. But it really, this German family, it's just so messed up that it's hard to really buy into it. But again, it kind of maybe opens your eyes to see, like, yeah, maybe there were such circumstances like this, and maybe ultimately there was these kinds of dysfunctional families who really didn't know how to raise their kids based on right and wrong. And the interesting thing is that Bruno is the youngest in the family and the main character, and he's the one who actually is way more intelligent than even the adults in the film. I mean, because he really questions things. Because there's one point where he gets a tutor along with his sister in the film, and you'll see how this tutor is basically just trying to brainwash them. Like, he basically gives them Mein Kampf and tells them to read Mein Kampf, and it basically is just a book that's, supposed to brainwash you. And the sister completely falls for it, but Bruno is like all questioning, like, why is it like that? What? This doesn't make any sense. And he really does see how what these people believe in is completely ludicrous. Especially when he starts to develop relationships with the people that are within the camp, in particular the young boy Shmuel, as well as an older man that actually comes before Bruno actually meets Shmuel. And really that's really how this movie sort of plays out. It's for the most part it does focus on the friendship. However, I think it takes a little bit of time in order to actually get to the friendship. It's still there and present, and I think they do a good job of making it seem genuine and cutesy and innocent. But it is just an uncomfortable film. It's a really awkward film, especially when the family themselves are just so messed up, and completely dysfunctional, to the point where it's almost like the family doesn't really. I mean, they don't really spend that much time together. It seems like the dad is off doing his work. The daughter is like in her room in her own little world with her posters and stuff. It's crazy. The mom, although it seems she wants to have a relationship with the kids and everything, she seems to be the only one that seems a little bit more of a realistic character than the father and the sister, who just feel like these very one-dimensional Nazi loyalists for the most part, and just the way that they are is just so there's no establishment as to really how they became this way. I mean, I think it is through the daughter a little bit, especially with the tutor. But with the dad, you don't really see that kind of development, and you don't really see things through his point of view at all. So really a lot of the other characters are fairly weak. And you don't really get invested in them, or interested in what they have to bring to the table. But you really do feel, for the most part, Bruno's character. Bruno's probably the best character out of the entire thing, because even though he's played by a child actor, and I understand child actors are maybe not the best actors, especially since they're children, and obviously acting is not the easiest thing for a child to do, I still think that the child actor in this film did an okay job. You still feel for his character, though, because he has the most layers to him. You really do feel his circumstances. You do get a sense of who he is and what he likes and what he's all about. But these other characters don't feel like characters so much. Now with Shmuel, you can get a sense that he's there and that he's present, but really for the most part it's pretty much all about Bruno. I don't think there's really a lot within Shmuel so much. I don't think Shmuel's really given so much characterization, as he is fairly innocent and has to deal with all of these sort of separate issues that aren't really exposed so much on camera. And I think there's kind of a reason for that, though, because the novel blends in this whole idea of secrecy, like the secrecy of the horror, you know, because even the mom doesn't even know that they're, like, burning people in the camps. Like, I guess she had no clue about that. And then you'll see how she figures that out at one point in the novel, or in the book, or in the movie. And once you figure that out, you kind of realize, she realizes how messed up it is. And she's the only one that acts particularly, she actually displays some realism here. I mean, she suddenly goes, my God, what are these, what? You know, she's the one that seems to really wake up. But I think once she wakes up, she realizes that she's powerless to do anything about it. And that's why she wanted the kids to get away from this. Especially the tutor, because I think she even knew that the tutor was, because she asked at one point, about Bruno, you know, what do you, because Bruno was actually sneaking in something, I think it was to eat, so he could give it to Shmuel at one point, and then she goes, he tells his mom that I'm going out to read books, and she says, "Oh, what's your tutor making you read?" And he goes, "Oh, he makes me," or like, she knows that he's supposed to read history and stuff, and he goes, "They're adventure books though," and she completely doesn't try to question him on whether or not he has adventure books, but she kind of goes, "Oh, okay, yeah, go," because I mean, even she knows that, you know, what this tutor is teaching her kids is ridiculous. So you really have that. It would have been nice to see more of the mom, I think, because I think the mom was actually somebody who was dealing with really dire circumstances, but yet they did not really focus on her so much. Even though she is in a lot of the scenes, it would have been nice to see more of her and see how she deals with the figuring out all of these things later on, and how the concentration camps are basically just death camps, out to kill people, basically. And the thing is that the house that they moved to is fairly close to the concentration camp, and that's why she at one point sees the burning, and then she goes, "Well, what's going on?" And then one of the soldiers is like, "Oh, you don't know what's going on?" So it's kind of like that, because I think really all she thought is that they were supposed to be servants, but I don't think she thought that people were actually getting killed, and at one point there's this one guy, and it's really messed up. One of the servants in the house who's a prisoner in the concentration camp, I guess he slips or messes up with the drink, and then one of the Nazi soldiers just basically gets up and starts beating the crap out of him in front of the entire family. And then the mom is just like, she really wants to say something, she really wants to do something, but she knows she can't do anything, because no matter what she'll do, that person is still going to try to hurt the prisoner of the concentration camp, and technically the servant of their house, which I found rather odd, because it doesn't really explain in the film how the whole system of the concentration camps really works, as so much as it says, yeah, they're servants now, because even at one point Shmuel ends up in the house. So Shmuel ends up serving the house and then going back into the concentration camp. It kind of, I don't know if how that would really play out realistically, actually in World War II. You could probably figure that out through maybe some history books, if they actually did tell people within the concentration camps, hey, you can come out now and go be a servant in somebody's house now. I really don't know how that would work, even if that would even work at all. But I think for the most part, the film does seem genuine. It seems like it's trying to get something across. It's trying to display to you the harsh reality of these circumstances, and how sometimes even the smallest of us may be the most wise, like with Bruno being the most smartest, most loyal, most genuine of the characters. And I think that is I think something really good to show to people. I think the book has been widely used, and I would definitely recommend it to people, even though I have not really read up on the original source material. But from what I can tell, it is a decent novel, I'm sure, especially when it's based upon this film as well. But I think it's just a regular film in the sense that I think it's okay. I don't think it's underrated or overrated. I just think that some of the things that it touches upon are just, it's just the whole messed up family, and just the kind of craziness that Bruno had to kind of deal with is just, it's very uncomfortable. At least it was uncomfortable for me to watch. These bits with how the family just does not just does not seem to have any genuine heart when it comes to these circumstances that they were surrounded in, especially from the father and the sister. So really, it's kind of a mixed bag for me, but I still enjoyed the film for what it was. Is it a great film? I don't think necessarily, but I think it's still a good film in the sense that it does bring up these thematic messages of how harsh and cruel the reality is, and how these sort of secrets come out, and I think that was really well handled. I just think it was a little bit too uncomfortable for me to watch, because of how dark it went, and kind of left me not really feeling inspired or feeling enjoying it at certain points, because it's not one of those films that you sit and you're kind of enjoying it. And I think that's only just because it has just that gritty, this dysfunctional family, the fact that it's just so messed up, and how everything appears so normal but yet is so deranged. It's hard for me to enjoy it. It's hard for me to sit back and actually appreciate the themes, appreciate the friendship between Shmuel and Bruno. That kind of gets pushed off to the side when I just see how messed up Bruno's entire family is, pretty much, and how and how basically the whole circumstances that they're in is just rather discomforting to watch. And for the most part, though, I think, though, the messages within it, the points that the film tries to get across, I think are well handled. I just think the way that they structure it with this whole secrecy, and then having the prisoners actually come to the house, and all these kinds of shady stuff going on, and Bruno and his sister don't really know about it until later on. Lots of things are revealed, and then basically his sister becomes brainwashed, but Bruno doesn't really become brainwashed. But really, that's really how it's sort of a twisted movie, to say the least. It's a little bit of a twisted movie, at least for my taste. I feel like I think that's just because it's dealing with kids, but not only kids, it's just dealing with a whole family-like environment. And then when you have this kind of family-like environment, and then you see how completely dysfunctional it is, not only within the family itself, but just the things that surround the family too, that it makes it hard to enjoy and to appreciate. So yeah, that's just kind of my feelings going out of it. I mean, I understand if some people feel differently and feel like it's very powerful and it's really speaking to you, and it's very, heartbreaking. Yes, I felt heartbroken too when I watched it. it's just hard to watch with the whole family, and it's hard to watch Bruno, who could have done something so much more worthwhile in his life, and yet him having to be tied down to these horrible circumstances, as well as Shmuel too, and seeing how ultimately how it all ends, which is rather dark. It is hard for me to find some kind of enjoyment and inspiration from it. Unlike something with Schindler's List, where I come out of it with more of a sense of hope, even though there was a lot of tragedy within it, because you see how Schindler rises above something and tries to do the right thing. And with this movie, I felt too that it was the same with Bruno's character, that he was trying to do the right thing, but at the same time, it just seems more like they were caught up in these circumstances, because I think even Bruno at the end doesn't know what really ends up happening to him, really, because he doesn't really know these circumstances. I don't think even Shmuel really knew necessarily, because the end is pretty chaotic, and kind of gruesome, but I don't want to give away the ending. But it does seem like, yeah, it's a very uncomfortable movie. Just if you don't mind that discomfort from what I'm explaining to you, and if what I've said throughout this entire review doesn't sound uncomfortable to you, then more power to you. But if you're listening to what I'm saying and you're seeing how uncomfortable and odd and awkward and just kind of chilling it is, and it doesn't give you a very good or satisfying feeling, then yeah, this movie may not be for you. Just because it does go down this rather fairly, I think, dark route. And it does feel, though, ultimately, that what ends up happening to Shmuel as well as Bruno is not really fully fleshed out, because it just kind of happens randomly. But I think that's kind of how the concentration camps were, and the fact that they were rather random, and to how they displayed or where they put people. But it's just hard to watch at points, because it just gets rather uncomfortable, and for me that's really what got me sucked out of it, and made me not enjoy it as much as I would something like Schindler's List, where I feel like even though there are such fairly cruel things happening throughout the entire thing, you still get a sense of real hope and power within it. And with this one, I kind of felt sort of empty, because it was almost like taking what was ever good and just shrinking it to the point where it didn't exist anymore. And it doesn't really leave you with anything. I felt like with the ending scene, I felt so empty from it, because it sucks all the inspiration out, and kind of says, no, yeah, well, that's what happens, it was the Holocaust, what could you do? And kind of leaves you with that kind of a feeling. So it's, yeah, it was just not a good feeling for me. But does that make the film bad? Absolutely not. Does that make the film any less inspiring than something like Schindler's List? Absolutely not. But at the same time, I think for me, it just left me with just a cold just, oh, okay, this is how it ends. Oh, okay. That's depressing. It's a good film. It's just a depressing film and an uncomfortable film. That's the best way I can sum up this film to anybody. It's not a bad film at all, I think, in my opinion, but it still has these things in it that just make it fairly uncomfortable to watch, and fairly fairly hard to watch, and you find really hardly any characters you want to hold on to. You want to hold on to Shmuel and Bruno, but that's it. Like, all these other characters, they're just props and don't really serve anything, and they really are just, they really do feel like these one-dimensional people, except the mom, who does seem to have this kind of genuine concern for her kids. Even though it's not fully displayed, you will see it at points. The father, I don't think he gives a crapola about his kids. I don't think anybody else really cares. I think there is a genuine caringness for the sister for her brother at points. Like, at one point when the parents are arguing, she takes Bruno by her side, and you see the humanity there. It's just so odd because everything else she says is just so cruel and either cruel or brainwashy that you just don't, you just don't know how. I guess you see that she is a genuine person for, I guess, her family, but it's really that genuineness is not really explored at all, because a lot of the time you see her just being this completely brainwashed Nazi loyalist throughout the entire thing. So that's really, I think, all I can say about this film before I even ramble on way too much about it. It is a good film. It's just an uncomfortable film for me. It may not be uncomfortable for some people, but the way that everything was displayed out, it became at points way too uncomfortable for me personally, and got me sucked out of the film. And at the end, I wasn't really left with much. But I still feel that genuineness between the two, Bruno and Shmuel, I think is well done for the most part. And I think you do see the kind of really innocent little friendship that they have. But it's just overcrowded with this uncomfortableness that it's really hard for me to get invested so much in the friendship, because it is just surrounded by so much uncomfortable, awkward moments that it is hard to really it's just hard for me to watch. But I think it is a good film. I definitely would recommend it to people. It's just for me, just be prepared if you are, I guess from what I'm saying, if anything sounds uncomfortable, you'll probably feel that same uncomfortableness as I do. But if from what anything I said does not sound uncomfortable to you, then you'll probably get through it just fine. But for me, yeah, these things were just, the relationship is nice and it's genuine and sweet, but it's just overflowing with and surrounded by so much uncomfortableness that it's hard to have that genuine relationship feel more genuine and focused upon when they're just in all of these other uncomfortable circumstances, and they're the only two characters you really root for in the end, because everybody else is just pretty much evil around them. But I think that's really all I can say about this film. I definitely would recommend people, if they are interested, to watch the film if you'd like. We'll put a link below where you can watch it. But I think that's really all I can say about this film before I ramble on too much about it. But again, any questions, comments, concerns, more than happy to answer them. But until next time, everybody,